Lin Hao stood on the edge of the old training ground, and the plastic track under his feet had been trampled to pieces, and the corners were still ripped up, as if he was mocking him for the wolves he had been laughing at for the past few years. He lowered his head and looked at his knees full of straps and smiled bitterly. His brain was full of scenes from the competition 3 years ago. He was still a little famous star at that time. As a result, a mistake was made and his knees were directly smashed into the guardrail. The doctor said he would never return to the peak again. Since then, he has changed from a genius to a waste firewood, and children on the street can point at him and smile, saying that this guy once dared to dream of the battle of the sky. War in the sky, when this name is mentioned, who is not angry? It is the world's top competitive technology competition. With the collective energy, technology and mysterious power, the champions can not only win both fame and fortune, but also be written into the history of human evolution. When Lin Hao watched the broadcast when he was a child, he always fantasized about standing on that game and accepting the call from the whole world. But now, he can't even make an appointment in the lowest level area, and can only rely on giving others a small amount of salary to earn to support himself. Hey, Lin Hao. Why are you still fucking me in a daze? The boss asked you to accompany the newcomer there to be warm. Don't be hesitant. A thick-speaking door came from the training ground. He was the manager of the venue, full of impatience. Lin Hao clicked a little, dragged his stiff legs and walked over, with no trouble in his heart. He spent 2 years of training in this job and had long been accustomed to being used as a sandbag. In the middle of the training ground, a group of newcomers wearing new sportswear were warming up, with a look of a newborn bullish robber in their eyes. As Lin Hao approached, several people glanced at him, muttered something in a low voice, and then a laugh broke out. He didn't have to listen to what they were saying, it was just "this is the one, that wasteland Lin Hao." He lowered his head and tightened his shoelaces, pretending that he didn't hear it. "Come on, let's train the sprint, Wuchailin, you can run and show them." Lin Hao, the coach who led the team, shouted, his lingering in talking. Lin Hao gritted his teeth and stood on the starting line without saying a word. With a whistle, he suddenly rushed out. Although his knees were intimately painful, his speed was still too good. But without running a few steps, the helper from behind easily surpassed him. Someone deliberately slowed down and grinned at him, as if he was deliberately humiliating. After Lin Hao finished a lap, he stopped panting, sweating all over his head. The instructor walked over and patted his shoulder, with a little disdain in his language. "It's okay, Wuchailin, I didn't expect you to run so fast. But don't force yourself to avoid falling again and even accompanying you." Lin Hao lowered his head and didn't say anything, and he felt like he was stabbed hard in his heart. He knew he shouldn't care about these words, but every time he heard it, it was like a wound being torn open again. He turned around and walked, found a corner to sit down, took out the water tank and sucked a few times, and tried to calm himself down. At this moment, a crisp sound came from the side. "Lin Hao, are you complaining about yourself again? Didn't you say you would give up?" Lin Hao raised his head and saw Su Shaoqing standing far away, wearing a simple white t-shirt and denim pants, with a smile on his face. She is Lin Hao's childhood sweetheart. No matter how eager he is to make a living, this girl is always the first to stand up and suck her waist. "Xiqing, why are you here again? This place is dirty and chaotic. What's the best thing to look at?" Lin Hao curled his lips and put on an indifferent look. Su Shaoqing walked over, squatted beside him, and looked at him seriously. "I'm here to see you, and I will remind you not to forget your dreams at the beginning. The battle of the sky will not wait for you. If you don't cheer up, you will have no qualifications to register." Lin Hao heard this and felt a little sad. Of course he has not forgotten the battle of the sky, but now he can't even participate in the most basic competition. What dreams are you talking about? However, looking at Su Shaoqing's shiny eyes, he still smiled hard. Okay, I understand. You little girl cares more than my mother." Su Shaoqing hummed, stood up and clapped her hands. "Then you have to listen, otherwise I will come and complain about you every day." After saying that, she turned around, leaving behind a refreshing smile. Lin Hao looked at her back and felt warm in his heart. but immediately he was actually caught in a basin of cold water. He knew that Xiao Qing was sincerely doing his best, but some things cannot be solved by hard work. That night, Lin Hao dragged his tired body back to the small and dilapidated house he rented. There was nothing worthwhile except a bed and a few pieces of old furniture. As soon as he sat down, his phone was hit. It was a strange number. He hesitated for a moment and then picked it up. "Hey, is it Lin Hao?" The voice of the phone was low and sandy, and it sounded like an old man. Lin Hao glanced at the eyebrows. "It's me, who?" "My name is Gu Yanting. I heard about you and wanted to see you. At 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, don't miss the training ground for the abandoned old city." After saying this, the other party directly called, without giving Lin Hao a chance to react at all. Lin Hao stared at the phone screen, asking his brain. Gu Yanting? How come this name sounds a bit familiar? After thinking about it for a long time, he suddenly slapped his thigh. Isn't this the competitive legend that has been retreating for many years? He said that he won 3 consecutive championships in the Battle of the Sky that year, but later he suddenly disappeared and became a mythical figure. But how could this kind of big shot come in like this? With a stomach full of doubt, Lin Hao arrived in the old city early the next morning. The wasteland training ground was no longer used, the grass was taller than the humans, and the air was filled with a musty smell. As soon as he got to the ground, he saw an old man wearing a gray sportswear standing there, with a little squint on his back, but his eyes were as bright as if he could see through people. "Are you Lin Hao?" The old man looked him up and down, his temperament as dull as if he was asking. Lin Hao clicked a little bit restrained. "Yes, I am." "Are you Gu Yanting's foreboding?" The old man didn't answer, turned around and pointed to the center of the venue. "Go, run 10 laps, let me see how many skills you have left." Lin Hao was stunned, thinking why did this old man come so directly? But when he looked at the other party's unquestionable look, he still did what he did. After running for less than 2 laps, Lin Hao felt that his knees began to develop soreness and his speed slowed down. Gu Yanting stood on the side, his face getting heavier, and he finally couldn't help but open his mouth. "That's it? Where did that guy who dared to fight back then? He's running like a turtle now, and he still wants to turn over?" Lin Hao heard this and came without any breath. He gritted his teeth and accelerated his speed, but the pain in his knees still made him step on the tip of a knife every step. After running 10 laps, he was directly on the ground, panting like a dog. Gu Yanting walked over, squatted down and looked at him, with a little disappointment in his language. "Treatment is an excuse, and waste firewood is a matter. If you can't bear such hardship, you should go home in reality." Lin Hao gritted his teeth and stood up reluctantly. "Foreign, you came to me, wouldn't it just to get me a fight, right? I know I'm a waste, but I don't have to choose. My knees are broken, my talent is gone, and I can't even get the qualifications for the competition. How can you turn me over?" Gu Yanting sneered, took out a small bottle from his pocket and threw it into Lin Hao's hand. "Drink it, and follow me. I don't take waste, but you guys still have a little bit of a dissatisfaction in your bones. I'll give you a chance. Whether you can catch it depends on yourself." Lin Hao looked down at the small bottle in his hand, with a red liquid similar to blood inside, emitting a strange smell. His heart skipped a beat. He didn't think so, but looking at Gu Yanting's eyes, he felt that he couldn't drink it. After hesitating for a few seconds, he gritted his teeth and poured it down. The moment the liquid entered his throat, Lin Hao could only feel that his whole body seemed to be burned by fire, and something seemed to be shaking in his blood vessels, which made him almost scream. But after a few minutes, the pain gradually turned into a warm current, and the soreness in the knees also decreased a lot. He looked at Gu Yanting in surprise, his face full of disbelief. "What is this? Gu Yanting didn't answer directly, but said coldly, "This is just the beginning. You have something in your body. You have been sleeping for too long. You should wake up. Follow me and I will teach you how to dig out this force, but remember, this path is not that easy to walk. If you take a wrong step, you may have no life." Lin Hao was shocked and wondered if this old man knew something unsimple. But seeing his days like a dog in recent years, he suddenly felt that even if it was a dead end, it was stronger than it is now. He clicked a little, his voice was low but determined. "Okay, I'll go with you." Gu Yunting didn't say much, turned around and left. Lin Hao followed behind, and his brain formed a group. He didn't know what he would face next, but he felt straightforward in his heart that this might be his last chance to turn over. A few days later, Lin Hao followed Gu Yunting to a secret valley, with a very simple training base inside, surrounded by cliffs, and even the birds could not fly in. Gu Yunting pointed to a pile of broken equipment and said expressionlessly, "From today, you have to complete the tasks I have given you every day. If you can't finish it, don't eat. If you want to become stronger, force yourself to the extreme first." Lin Hao looked at the training equipment and his heart was pounding, but he knew that there was no way out now. He pointed to the training and started the first day of training. The task Gu Yunting gave him was simply amazing, carrying 50 kilograms of heavy objects, climbing up the 100-meter cliff beside the valley, with a limit of half an hour. Lin Hao was stunned when he heard this. This is not a training, it is so simple. But Gu Yunting didn't give him any chance to pay for the price. He threw the heavy object on his back and sat next to him drinking tea and watching the show. Lin Hao gritted his teeth and started crawling. After a few steps, he felt like his legs were filled with a penis, and the old wounds in his knees began to hurt again. But whenever he wanted to give up, Su Shaoqing's smile appeared in his brain, and those mouths that mocked him for being wiped out. He told himself that he couldn't stop, and that if he stopped, it would be over. Half an hour later, Lin Hao finally climbed to the top of the cliff, and the whole person fell to the ground, moistening his body, as if he had just come out of the water. Gu Yunting walked over and glanced at him. His temperament was still so cold, hard to pass the exam. Add 10 kilograms tomorrow and continue. Lin Hao almost vomited blood after hearing this, but he felt a strange feeling in his heart. Although this old man was poisonous, he seemed to be able to find something back. He gasped, reluctantly sat up, and asked, "Foreign, why do you want to help me? I'm so tired, why do you have to pay for this?" Gu Yunting didn't look at him, but just looked at the mountain far away, with a low voice, "Because the things in your body have a little bit of purity with me. If you want to know what it is, just live first and don't die here." Lin Hao was shocked and knew that there was a big secret behind this, but he didn't ask any more questions, just clenched his fists silently. He knew that the days ahead would only be more difficult, but no matter what, he would have to continue to rush. At the same time, in the remote city center, in a golden and beautiful competition venue, Lei Zhentian was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window of the training room, overlooking the entire competition. He is tall and strong, with a natural arrogance in his eyes, holding a copy of the information he had just sent, and a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. "Lin Hao? Didn't that Wuchai give up? Interesting, it seems that this year's pre-selected game will bring more joy." The assistant beside him asked carefully, "Brother Tian, do you want to do some hand and kick him out in advance?" Lei Zhentian slapped his hand and said in a slight manner, "No, waste is waste. Keep him and let him see with his eyes, what is the real king." After speaking, he turned into the training room and was ready to face the next challenge. At this time, Lin Hao still didn't know that he had been targeted by a certain king. He just gritted his teeth and practiced hard in the valley day by day. Sweat and pain became common, but he could feel that there was a force in his body and was awakening a little. Lin Hao's life in the valley was like a turtle. Every day, he was broken by Gu Yunting from dawn, climbing cliffs, carrying heavy objects, running distances, and even rushing against the current in the turbulent streams. In the first few days, every time he finished his exercise, he was so tired that he couldn't lift his fingers. At night, he lay on the hard wooden bed, and his body was sore that he couldn't sleep well. But strangely, whenever he felt that he couldn't stand it, the warm current in his body would inexplicably surge, as if he was given a pungent agent, allowing him to get up and continue. That morning, the sky was not bright yet, and the smoke in the valley was as thick as a white slug. Gu Yunting stood by Lin Hao's bed, knocking the edge of the bed with a wooden stick. The sound was so cold that it could be so cool. "Get up, increase the amount of your mission today. Don't be slowed down." Lin Hao rubbed his sleepy eyes, and reluctantly got up, muttering in his mouth, "Foreign, are you really not planning to let me live?" Gu Yunting glanced at him and said unhappily, "Stop talking, you can't live because you have no ability. Put on your shoes, go to the foot to gather 10 minutes later, and don't eat breakfast 1 second later." After speaking, he turned around and left, leaving Lin Hao and others there gritted their teeth. When he arrived at the foot of the mountain, Gu Yunting pointed to a steep slope that was almost vertical, with a thick hemp skeleton on it, and a large stone head connected to the other end of the skeleton, which was probably 70 or 80 kilograms. Lin Hao's skin was numb at first sight. What trouble does this old man want to make? Sure enough, Gu Yunting's next words made him feel half-hearted. Pull the stone to the top, and it takes 40 minutes to fall, and you'll add 5 minutes once you fall. Do you understand? Lin Hao swallowed, stinging his skin. He knew that it was useless to talk to this old man, so he could only grit his teeth and go on. He grabbed the numb slug and started climbing up the steep slope. He felt his arms sore that they were about to break after a few steps. The weight of the stone made him feel like he was tug-of-war every step. Sweat flowed into his eyes, causing pain. He bit his teeth tightly, and his brain was filled with Su Xiaoqing's words, "Don't give up." On the way, a piece of stone under his feet suddenly eased. Lin Hao didn't stand firmly. The whole person slid a few meters behind. The marijuana strangled into his palm, which made him almost scream. Shirtao also rolled down a few times, almost pulling him down together. He gasped heavily, lying on the slope and did not dare to move. He felt his heart sneer, but Gu Yunting's cold voice sounded like a little while in his ears. Did it fall? Add 5 minutes and continue. Lin Hao was so angry that he wanted to kill someone, but when he saw Gu Yunting's expressionless face, he forced himself to hold back and grab the tights and continued to crawl. When he finally dragged the stone to the top, his whole person fell to the ground, his palms were worn out, and his blood mixed with sweat dripped on the ground. He gasped like a dog, and when he turned his head, Gu Yunting was standing next to him, holding an old meter, and said without changing his face, 45 minutes, more than 5 minutes, I didn't eat at noon today. Lin Hao heard this and almost fell into trouble. He sat up and couldn't help but yell, "Foreign, are you training or swearing? I'm almost dead, so why don't you give me food?" Gu Yunting sneered, squatted down and looked at him, without any sympathy in his voice. "Want to eat? Okay, add another set of negative runs to the evening, and you will get a bite of hot after the run." Lin Hao closed his mouth without saying a word. Although he was unhappy, he also knew that this old man was so angry that he wanted to force him. He wiped the blood from his hands, stood up and patted the soil on his body, gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, run away, who are you afraid of?" Gu Yunting didn't say anything anymore, but just clicked a little and turned around and walked away. His back still looked so cold. As the days passed, Lin Hao's training intensity became higher and higher, but he gradually realized that his body seemed to be really getting stronger. Although the old wounds in my knees still hurt occasionally, they are much better than before, and my physical strength is more than twice as strong as when I came to the valley. The strangest thing is that every time he practices to the point of collapse, a warm current in his body will emerge, helping him relieve his fatigue, and even causing his speed and strength to surge in a short period of time. He thought that this might have something to do with the bottle of red liquid that Gu Yunting gave him, but every time he asked, the old man would shut up and just let him practice carefully. That night, after the training, Lin Hao sat on a large rock in the valley, staring at the dead sun in the sky. Gu Yunting didn't walk away easily, but walked over with a pot of water and sat next to him. His temperament was more peaceful than usual. "Boy, I've been doing well in these few days, and I haven't lost my face." Lin Hao was stunned, turned his head and looked at the old man, and couldn't help asking, "Foreign, why do you want to help me? I know I'm not a genius, and now I'm even more a waste of firewood. What are you thinking?" Gu Yunting didn't answer immediately, just took a sip of water, looking away, as if he was trapped in a certain memory. After a long time, he said in a low voice, "Because the things in your body are a bit similar to what I encountered that year. If I don't help you, it will probably kill you." Lin Hao was shocked and hurriedly chased him. "What's the matter? Do you know how to do it?" But Gu Yunting slammed his head, stood up and patted the soil on his butt. "It's useless to tell you now. When you can control it, you will naturally understand. Starting tomorrow, double the training and prepare." After speaking, he left without looking back, leaving Lin Hao alone to ask the phone. Although Gu Yunting didn't say it clearly, Lin Hao was worried. He knew that the power in his body was not simple, and it might be hidden. But no matter what, he has no way out now and can only walk forward with his head. Several months have passed, and Lin Hao's changes are so great that he himself feels incredible. His speed, endurance and strength have increased by several times, and he can hardly even feel the old wounds of his knees. Although Gu Yunting's mouth was still so poisonous, he occasionally showed a satisfied expression, making Lin Hao feel that he had not suffered so much in vain. This day, Gu Yunting suddenly told him that the training in the valley had come to an end, and he would be taken to participate in a small-scale regional competition, which was the first step to verify the results in these few months. Lin Hao heard this and felt both excited and nervous. He knew that this was his first battle to return to the game. Although it was just a small game, for him, the meaning was not as good as the battle in the sky. The competition was located in an old competition venue near the old city. Although the scale was not large, there were still many people coming that day and the audience sat in full. Lin Hao was wearing old sportswear and stood in the rest area of the contestants, listening to the private words of the people around him, feeling a little uncomfortable. He was so familiar with those words, it was nothing more than "Isn't this the one who was a waste of Lin Hao, and why did he dare to compete?" He lowered his head and tightened his shoes, pretending that he didn't hear it, but his fists were still clenched. Gu Yunting stood beside him, patted his shoulder, and said in a low voice, "Don't worry about what they say. When you go to the field, show your real skills and let them shut their mouths." Lin Hao clicked his head, took a deep breath, and walked to the starting line. This game was a short-range sprint game. Although it was simple, it was a huge challenge for him. After all, this was his first official game since he was injured. With a whistle, Lin Hao suddenly rushed out, so fast that he was shocked by himself. The player next to him was left behind by him, and there were also a few shocks in the audience. He could feel the power in his body was dying again, as if he had wings on his legs. In the last 100 meters, he almost stabbed with all his strength, and was the first to hit the final line, achieving 2 seconds faster than the second place. After the final line, Lin Hao stopped, gasped with his waist and sweat dripped on the ground, and his brain was blank. It was not until the referee announced his ranking and the audience burst into a sound that he responded that he really won. He turned his head and looked at Gu Yunting. The old man smiled rarely on his face and said, "It's okay, it's not in vain." But this victory didn't make Lin Hao excited for too long, because he soon heard a familiar name, Lin Hao. It is said that this guy also registered the same series of regional competitions. Although he did not come today, he would have encountered it in the subsequent competition. Lin Hao felt nervous. He knew that Lin Hao was not an ordinary opponent, he was a real monster. He had never won this guy before when he was not injured. After the game, Lin Hao and Gu Yunting returned to the valley and continued to engage in more stringent training. Gu Yunting told him that this small game was just an appetizer, and the real challenge was still at the back. In the next few months, Lin Hao participated in several regional competitions, and he won good results every time, and his reputation was gradually spread. Although some people still called him Waiting Chai, more sounds began to become shocking and acknowledged. That night, Lin Hao just finished a heavy run and sat in the valley to rest, and his mobile phone suddenly fell. When he saw that it was Su Shaoqing who called, he heard her excited voice, "Lin Hao. I heard that you have won the competition recently, it's so bad. When will you come back? I'll ask you to have a good meal, and I'll give you a happy wish." Lin Hao heard her voice, and felt warm in his heart. He smiled and said, "Okay, when my training is over, I will go back to find you. But don't regret it. I'll say you'll ask." Su Shaoqing chuckled at the phone and answered happily. After hanging up the phone, Lin Hao looked at the night sky and felt indescribable. He knew that the current achievements were just the beginning, and the battle from the sky was still far away, not to mention the mountain that thundered the sky. But no matter what, he finally took the first step and got closer to his original dream. At the same time, in the luxury competition venue in the city center, Lei Zhentian was looking at the latest competition report, with a striking smile on his face. He threw the report on the table and turned his head to the assistant next to him. "This waste is really interesting. It seems that you have to find an opportunity to meet him." The assistant pointed his head and felt in his heart that this battle would probably not be as simple as Lei Zhentian thought. Lin Hao in the valley didn't know that he had been targeted by the real king. He just practiced hard day by day, waiting for the next competition to arrive. Every step is approaching that remote goal. Lin Hao sat on a large rock in the valley, blew over the night wind, with a hint of striking spirit, and could not dispel the heat in his heart. He just finished his day of training, and his muscles were still hurting, but compared to himself a few months ago, he seemed to have changed his personal life. The phone record that Su Shaoqing had just called was still left on the phone screen, and her ears seemed to be able to hear her excited smile. He grinned, looked down at his palms filled with rogues, and silently muttered in his heart, "Work harder, it's sunny, wait for me to stand on the battlefield of the sky battle and show you the real Lin Hao." At this time, the sound of footsteps came from behind, and Gu Yunting's familiar voice broke the silence of the night. "Boy, don't be stunned. Tomorrow we'll start the last stage of training. The pre-order of the Battle of the Sky is about to begin. If you still want to grind, go back as soon as possible to serve as your waist." Lin Hao turned his head and saw that the old man was still in the cold look, holding a bottle of water in his hand. His eyes were a little more serious than usual. "I know, I will never lose the chain." Lin Hao stood up and patted the earth on his body. His language was filled with a sense of stability. Gu Yunting glanced at him and snorted, "I said it beautifully. Don't give me and let me go when I go to the court." Remember, this selection game is not just a door, but also a trial for whether you can survive. After saying this inexplicable sentence, he turned around and left, leaving Lin Hao confused. "Living? What does it mean?" Lin Hao muttered in a low voice, but there was a hint of anxiety in his heart. Over the past few days, he could feel the power in his body becoming stronger and stronger, sometimes even exploding uncontrollably, as if he would tear himself apart at any time. Although Gu Yunting never said it clearly, Lin Hao could guess that this could not be related to the bottle of red liquid. But now he couldn't ask anything, so he could only grit his teeth and wait for the day when the answer was revealed. A few weeks later, the pre-selected match of the Sky War finally opened. The competition is located in a giant competition venue in the center of the city, with high buildings surrounding it. The technological equipment in the venue is flashing with cold light, and the air is filled with a tight atmosphere. Lin Hao was wearing a simple sports suit and followed Gu Yunting into the pickup channel. His ears were filled with audience calls and enthusiastic introductions from commentators. He lowered his head and tightened his shoes, his heart beating a little fast. His brain was full of ridicule and failures over the past few years, but more of it was still the unwillingness to accept the scoundrel. "Lin Hao, remember what I taught you, don't be anxious and calm your mind." Gu Yunting stood beside him, jingling in a low voice, and his language was rarely gentle. Lin Hao clicked a little, took a deep breath, and walked to the starting line. This game is a comprehensive competition. The first thing is the ultimate sprint. The player must complete a 3-kilometer race on the road full of obstacles. The test is not only speed, but also reaction and endurance. With a whistle, Lin Hao suddenly rushed out, as fast as an arrow. The player next to him was thrown away by him, and the audience came to the table and was amazed. He could feel the power in his body boiling, and every step was like stepping on the cloud, unbelievably relaxed. The obstacles seemed to be slow in his eyes, climbing over and avoiding, with little effort. The final line was close to his eyes. He bit his teeth and finally rushed over the line in the last second, becoming the first. A thunderous palm burst out from the scene. Lin Hao gasped heavily on his waist, sweat dripped on the ground, and there was a feeling of innocence in his brain. He turned his head to look at Gu Yunting, and the old man stood on the side of the field, finally showing a satisfied smile on his face, and pointed him at the tip. Lin Hao felt excited and knew that this was just the beginning, and the real challenge was still at the back. In the next few rounds of competitions, Lin Hao followed the game all the way. Although he was exhausted every time, his results were more and more eye-catching. His name began to be published in the competitive circle. Those who used to call him Huan Chai can only open their mouths and watch him turn around. Su Shaoqing also came to the scene to cheer him on. Every time the competition ended, she was the first to hit the scene, smiling and giving him water, and still whispering, "Lin Hao, you are so good, you are almost a big star now." Every time Lin Hao heard this, he couldn't help laughing, but he knew in his heart that all these ultimate goals were far away from him. The battle of the sky is the stage he really wants to stand on. Before that, he still had a hurdle that could not be seen before Lei Zhentian. Sure enough, in the last round of the pre-selected game, Lin Hao finally saw this name on the list of candidates. Thunder shook the sky. The unsuccessful king on this game can make people breathless if they are just frustrated. On the day of the competition, there were no seats in the competition venue, and the audience was discussing this battle. One was a reversal of the black horse and the other was a king who could no one be able to defeat. Who doesn't like to watch this kind of trick? Lin Hao stood on the starting line and glanced at Lei Zhentian with a squint. This guy is tall, his muscles are as hard as steel wires, and his eyes are filled with a natural arrogance, which makes him look at him without looking at him directly. Lin Hao gritted his teeth, and a fire ignited in his heart. Isn't it a king? I will let you see today, waste can make you so good. This competition is the signature project of the Sky Battle, the ultimate limited confrontation competition. The candidates not only have to complete the high-difficulty road challenge, but also have to directly compete with the opponent on the way to test the comprehensive strength. The whistle sounded, and Lin Hao and Lei Zhentian rushed out at the same time, which was so fast that it was dazzling. On the road, Lei Zhentian was the first to start, and each action was as precise as a machine. Although Lin Hao was tight, he could clearly feel the pressure. The first obstacle was a vertical climbing wall up to 5 meters high. Lei Zhentian almost didn't slow down. He turned over in 3 or 2 seconds. Lin Hao gritted his teeth and followed, his palm hurt by the rough wall, but he didn't let himself fall off. The next race was even more distorted, full of rotating mechanical arms and sudden traps. Lei Zhentian seemed to have been familiar with everything and easily avoided every danger, while Lin Hao was forced to make some mistakes several times. Bowing is drying, don't be exhausted. Lei Zhentian sneered in front of him, his words filled with disdain. Lin Hao heard this and was so angry that his teeth were burning. The force in his body suddenly surged up, as if he was angry. His speed suddenly surged, and he approached Lei Zhentian in a few steps, and the two of them almost rushed over the middle point. The audience had already exploded, and who would have thought that Lin Hao could fight Lei Zhentian to this extent? Su Shaoqing sat in the stands, her hands were clenched, and she kept muttering, "Lin Hao, come on, don't let it go." Gu Yunting stood on the side of the field, with a complex light flashing in his eyes, as if he had seen some familiar shadow. The last section of the track is a direct confrontation zone, where the two have to achieve the weight and skills on a narrow platform. Lei Zhentian stopped sneeringly, turned around and looked at Lin Hao. "Come on, Wu Chai, let me see how many pounds you have." Lin Hao didn't say a word, but just took a deep breath and showed his attacking posture. The two people fought in an instant, and Lei Zhentian's power was amazing. Each hit was like a heavy blow. Although Lin Hao was fast, he was forced to retreat several times. The audience's shouts were almost overturning the roof. Lin Hao's brain was unusually cold. He knew that fighting hard was no good, so he could only find opportunities to fight back. Just as Lei Zhentian hit him with a heavy punch, he suddenly flicked his body, grabbed the gap in the other party, and kicked Lei Zhentian hard on the knee. Lei Zhentian stumbled and his face finally changed. Lin Hao took advantage of the opportunity to launch a fierce attack, adding fists and feet, forcing the other party to the side of the platform. But just when he thought he was holding the ticket, Lei Zhentian suddenly burst out with a strong aura, and with a backhand, he directly shocked Lin Hao and threw him heavily on the platform. "That's all you can do? Do you dare to challenge me?" Lei Zhentian walked over with a sneer, his eyes full of contempt. Lin Hao lay on the ground, feeling pain in his body. His eyes were a little blurred, but his brain suddenly flashed Su Shaoqing's smile, Gu Yunting's sarcasm, and the humiliation he had suffered in the past few years. He bit his teeth tightly, and the force inside his body seemed to be ignited, and there was flame burning in his blood. "I haven't stopped yet." Lin Hao growled and stood up suddenly, as fast as a shadow. He instantly hit Lei Zhentian and punched him hard in the chest. Lei Zhentian didn't expect that he still had this kind of force and was beaten to take a few steps back, and a shock finally appeared on his face. The two of them fought again, and this time Lin Hao seemed to have completely changed his character. Every shot was full of force. Although Lei Zhentian was strong, he began to show his fatigue. In the last hit, Lin Hao used all his strength to kick Lei Zhentian out of the platform with the side kick, winning the final victory of this battle. The whole scene was silent for a few seconds, and a deafening cry broke out immediately. Lin Hao stood on the platform, gasping heavily, feeling wounded, and grinned. He finally did it, defeating this arrogant king, and proving that he was no longer a waste. Su Shaoqing was so excited in the stands that her eyes fell down, and she desperately shouted his name. Lei Zhentian got up from the platform, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, looked at Lin Hao in a confused manner, and said in a low voice, "Boy, it's a bit interesting. I'll decide to go to the game." After saying that, he turned away, with a sense of reluctance in his back. Lin Hao didn't look at him anymore, but walked to the scene. Gu Yunting came up and patted him on the shoulder, with a difficult recognition in his language. "It's been a good deal, but this is just the beginning. The battle of the sky is your real test." Lin Hao pointed at the head. Although he was so tired that he was about to part, a bigger fire was burning in his heart. He knew that beating Lei Zhentian was just a milestone, and the real challenge was still ahead. A few weeks later, the Battle of the Sky came as scheduled. This is the world's top competition. The competition is crowded with people. The live broadcast lenses are aimed at every player, and the air is filled with a heavy smell of ignition. Lin Hao stood in the pickup channel, wearing a brand new sportswear, and his eyes were as strong as steel. After the pre-selected tournament, he is no longer the shabby that is ridiculed, but the most dazzling black horse on the tournament. The final project is the ultimate survival game. The candidates must complete a series of challenges in a simulated virtual battle. They not only test their physical skills, but also face unknown dangers. Lin Hao knew that this game was not only for the champion, but also to reveal the truth about the power inside the body. Gu Yunting finally told him a few days ago that power was a taboo force in his blood. Although it could make him surpass ordinary people, if it was not controlled well, it might backfire at any time, or even kill him. At the beginning of the competition, Lin Hao and other top picks were sent to the virtual war scene together. The environment changed rapidly, from the scorching desert to the cold snow-capped mountains. Every step was filled with killers. He used these months of training and blood to wear thorns all the way. Although he was eliminated several times, he gritted his teeth and rushed down. In the end, he faced Lei Zhentian again. This time, the two of them no longer had a single pure confrontation, but were fighting for the final victory flag in a collapsed ruin. Lei Zhentian is stronger than before, and every strike seems to be about to kill someone. Although Lin Hao tried his best, he was still forced into an extreme situation. Just as he was about to give up, the power inside his body suddenly ran away, and blood was red in front of him. Although the power surged, his consciousness began to blur. "Lin Hao, stay calm. Don't let it control you." Gu Yunting's voice came from the headphones, as if giving him a wake-up call. Lin Hao gritted his teeth and forced the violent force to suppress the last will of the flag. Although Lei Zhentian was close at hand, he was finally one step slower, and his eyes were slight and he watched Lin Hao win. After the final click, Lin Hao almost crawled over, his body was covered in blood and his mind was blurred, but when the referee announced that he was the champion, an unprecedented shout broke out on the whole field. He stood up reluctantly, looking at Su Zhao's smiling face in the stands, and Gu Yunting's finally relaxed expression, knowing in his heart that it was worth it. But just when he thought everything was over, Gu Yunting walked to him and said in a low voice, "Boy, the champion is just the beginning. Your blood and even bigger secrets are waiting for you to reveal them." Lin Hao was stunned, turned his head and looked at the old man, his eyes full of confusion. But he didn't ask any more questions, but he just pointed a little and a new aspiration for his heart ignited. As night fell, the lights of the competition venue illuminated the entire city. Lin Hao stood on the prize platform, holding the championship cup in his hand, and his ears were shouting from countless people. He knew that this was not the end, but the beginning of another journey. The road ahead is still long, but he is ready. No matter what is ahead, he will go forward without hesitation.